Thank you for that introduction. Just before I get started today, I wanted to add one thing to the introduction. I'm a severe stutterer, but you're not going to hear much of that today. Because as I'm speaking to you right now, there's part of my brain which is consciously controlling all the muscles that make words. And before I learned that particular skill at the age of 11, the only time I could open my mouth without the disability of stuttering was when I sang. Somehow singing certainly navigates the disability in the human brain. And so music gave me a new voice. I'd like to suggest that music and other art forms can also give a new voice to rural communities as we're moving forward into the 21st century. So if you are a musician, if you're a painter, if you're a photographer, an actor, a dancer, what's your 2020 plan? Okay, how does your art form relate to your income, the place where you live, your health care, your family? Turns out that rural communities ask many of the same questions, just on a larger scale. They're asking how the economics of their community is going to work. They're asking about health care and housing and a clean environment. And I think that rural artists and rural communities have a great deal in common. One of the things that we have in common, if you are a resilient artist or a member of a resilient community, you need to be resilient against those stories that slow you down. Let me start with artists. The artists in your community, most of them do not fit the profile of the disorganized, unemployed guitar player living in his parents' basement waiting to be discovered. No, the artists in your town are the music and art teachers in your public school. They're the church musicians that play weddings and funerals. They are artists of all kinds that produce festivals and ceremonies that are the regular part of the rhythm of your lives. These are competent people, these are trained people that are part of the fabric of your community. Similarly, okay, there's a notion that you can't build a career in a rural area if you're an artist. Well, when I graduated from college, understandably, a whole bunch of people said, well, you know what? If you want to make a living as a musician, you really need to go to New York or Nashville. That's where the opportunities are. Well, in the business of trying to figure this out, since I really didn't want to necessarily live in those places, I found out that you just needed a different strategy. If I went to New York as a musician, I'd be competing for existing opportunities against a whole bunch of other musicians. In a rural area, where there are so few opportunities, competition really doesn't matter that much. What matters is your ability to create new opportunities that didn't exist before. I had to figure out how my art form, my music, mattered in the kitchen table issues of the people around me. Now, small communities also face a similar problem of these stories that slow them down. The notion that small farming communities don't know anything about the complexities of diversity, ignore the fact that most of the food that you and I eat come from farms in which more than one language is being spoken. The notion that small towns lack diversity, that they're flyover country, that they don't think the big ideas, that ignores the fact that American democracy was born in the rural landscape. Those folks from fleeing England, those pilgrims, came over here to the American landscape to experiment with self-governance. Alexis de Tocqueville comes from France in 1830, and he marvels at rural people in small New England town halls because they have this pragmatic problem-solving ability that he couldn't see back in Europe. With this history in mind, though, we also have to look at opportunities in the present. Some of the old alignments, these sort of old, have started to change. The north and south alignment that has lingered since the ashes of the Civil War has recently given way to an urban and rural alignment. And I think this presents a marvelous opportunity for us as rural communities to reassess who we are and who we want to be going into the 21st century. Artists should be part of our economic development plan. But let's be real, we shouldn't expect them to be economists. Our civic artists have a chance to create a space in which people of different parts of our community can explore their shared history and their shared goals. That's how we move forward in developing a new identity. Let me give you an example. Right now, I live in northern New York in the High Peaks region of the Adirondack Mountains. The story of our place, most people see our place as a place of natural beauty, hiking, skiing, the Olympics. But a few years back, some researchers uncovered this amazing pre-Civil War voting rights story that very few people had heard about. It lit up our community. It resonated through every part of our region. And it was such an important story that we realized we couldn't tell it just with words. We needed music. We needed all the art forms. We needed all the grandeur and power of opera to tell a big story about who we were. Let me introduce you to a little bit of the story. Imagine you are a man named Lyman X. He's the fellow here in the lower left-hand corner. You're younger than him right now. Okay, you're a free black man living in the state of New York, in upstate New York. You're a father. You're a husband. As a free man, we might expect that you could vote just like the other free white men. Keeping in mind, women were not going to vote for the 20th century. But that assumption would be wrong. Because in order for you to vote, you have to prove that you own at least 40 acres of land. Now, let's just ask the question. Okay, show of hands here in the room. How many of you own 40 acres of land or more right now? Raise your hand. See how many votes we would get out of this room? I'm thinking none. This was clearly a voter suppression law to keep blacks out of the power structure of the state of New York in the 1840s. Well, what one particular abolitionist, a guy named Garrett Smith, in dialogue with some more famous ones like John Brown and Frederick Douglass and some others, they realized they couldn't change this voter suppression law. Maybe they could fulfill it. So Garrett Smith gives away 120,000 acres of Adirondack farmland to about 3,000 black men, some of whom had families. As soon as they started those farms, they could walk into the voting booth. We think, great idea, problem solved, right? Ain't America great? Except for the problem that they didn't think it through. There were huge oversights in the program. They got land, but they didn't get seeds, they didn't get plows, they didn't get wagons, they didn't get horses. Many of these men were not even farmers to begin with, and even a skilled farmer would have a hard time creating a new farm in the rocky soil and the short growing season of the Adirondacks. These men, women, and children not only faced the harsh and long and cold Adirondack winters, but they also needed to be resilient against the headwinds of institutional racism and prejudice. This is a huge story. Let me introduce you to a couple of the characters in our story. I wanted to introduce you to Lyman Epps, and here in this short little scene from the show, he is trying to convince his wife Anna that it's a good idea to travel to the Adirondacks. And we did this through the voices of Eric McKeever and Kirsten Piper Brown.
Them where it's the people that don't want them there.
Let me understand. We get 40 acres.
Yes.
Way up in the north.
Yes.
Will they teach us farming?
Yes.
Will they give us tools?
I don't
Will they
know.
give us seats?
I don't
You
know.
don't know.
I don't know.
Anna Epps, the character that I play in the opera, her plight and what she went through and the sacrifices that she made for her husband, I think relate to what a lot of modern day women still go through and face.
I relate to Lyman because he's a complex character. You've got this wonderful story of a man who is seeking out a new opportunity, and it allows him to get the vote in a time when men of color just didn't have that luxury, and it also gives him an opportunity to start over with 40 acres and learning a new trade. So it's exciting in the sense of coming to the North and having this great opportunity and getting the vote.
I can only imagine when Lyman goes to Anna and says, hey, we're moving into the wilderness so I can vote. What? So you can what? We're going where? And, making that trek and knowing that she really doesn't get anything out of it herself.
Because obviously she doesn't get the vote as a woman.
But don't worry, Anna.
I will worry as I please. Don't tell me that my worries are nothing.
I want the audience to sympathize with her and to see what a generous woman she was to do this for her husband, for her country, and for those who would, more importantly, come after her and Lyman.
In the North Country, we don't have a big opera company. That tends to be more of an urban thing. So to build this program over the last couple of years, we've had folks from all over the community participating. The research done by local scholars, by teachers and students, musicians of all ages doing things. We've had local funders as well as the National Endowment for the Arts to help us out. And in the midst of all this, what we realized is that we were telling a new story of who we are. We were moving from this identity of a place that was all about the natural beauty and sports to now claiming our part in the nation's struggle for racial and gender equality. Now, if you do this kind of work in rural areas, you realize that distance and isolation are a big problem. It's much easier, to stay home and watch the news than to scrape the ice off the car and drive down to a town hall meeting. Much easier to watch an online drama than it is to drive 20 miles to a community theater performance. I think as rural people, it is easy for us to claim that the rest of the world farms out its food production to us. But I think it's harder for us to ask the question, are we farming out our stories to other people? Are we letting other folks use their stories to slow us down to tell us who we are? This is the role of the civic artist that steps into this new exploration of rural identity. Now, this notion that artists can be part of civic dialogue, it's a very bold idea. If you go to Athens, Greece, and you climb up to the top of the Acropolis, you look over the railing, you realize that the center of Athenian democracy, the place where all those big debates happen, is surrounded by theaters. The plays of Sophocles often were sung, just like opera, got people talking about stuff. And big ideas happen in small places when people honestly talk about stuff. And artists can create this space where folks of different perspectives wrestle with a central question. That's what drama is. That's what opera is. That's what theater is. And this is the place where the civic artist can enter into this new exploration of rural identity. Now, Promised Land has proven that we can get diverse people together in a rural community and we can explore our identity. Promised Land has also proven the power of opera to do that in a rural community. Opera that we often consider is an art form that happens in the big city. But I think as we move forward, our rural communities need more than one kind of leader. Obviously, we need those leaders who can take care of the day-to-day business of our town. That's hard work. We need those leaders who can see the problems, solve those problems so we can get better. But we can't stop there. We also need those leaders who can help us understand who we are, because day-to-day business and solving problems is hard work. And all of those things, rural communities are facing these stories that slow us down. This is the role of the civic artist in a rural community, to gather around those images and symbols and celebrations that help us move forward when we face those headwinds that we cannot even anticipate in the 21st century. This is a new place for artists to enter into the dialogue. Thank you so much.